Welcome to Recross the Paths. My name is Cade, and today I am here with Derek. Welcome, Derek. I'm so glad you're here.
I am so glad to be here as well. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, we've already had a great time getting to know each other a little bit off mic, and I'm so excited to dive into your one of your projects here. We're going to be talking today about Falls Cube. Is it the Falls Cube or Falls Cube?
The naming is a whole thing. I it started as just my last name, but when I decided that I was going to put it into voting for KubeCon last year, I was like, that's probably not a good idea to have it tagged with my name. So it just became connected to the place that I live, which has falls in the name of the city. So, that's just what it is right now. Who knows? Perhaps somebody much better at branding will help me rebrand and figure this out. We'll see.
Well, I love that we're already in inside baseball here. On
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is cool. This is a really neat project. Before we dive into it, though, I always like to ask here on the front end, Derek, why Cube? What got you into this pursuit?
So I started cubing because it was on Arena and we were all, stuck in our homes during the pandemic and whatnot. So, for me, I've been playing for a long, long time. I've played Magic not quite since the beginning, but close. I think I started the summer that Ice Age came out. So quite a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody takes breaks. Everybody comes back. Nobody gives up Magic altogether. So when I came back this last time, I started drafting quite a bit, and this was just a really fun way to get drafts in. So that's how it originally started, specifically for me.
And that's interesting to hear you say that you started on Arena. And when most people talk about like drafting online, that was the Moto Cube, right?
Yeah, so this might alienate a portion of your audience here, but I'm a Mac person. I'm a
Hey, there you go.
Macintosh person, so no Magic Online for me. So yeah, I was drafting the Arena Cube way before any kind of vintage cube. I had heard of it and probably seen LSV or somebody draft it, but like that was the extent of it for me. I had never drafted vintage cube myself.
That's awesome. So then playing some of that online, how did that convert over to paper?
So I have the great fortune to have two awesome kids. They are 18 and 14 right now. And one of the things this last time that I came back to Magic was I taught my oldest how to play. And he was probably 8. It was probably 10 years ago or so. It was during Amonkhet, whenever that was. That feels like 10 years ago.
That is about 10 years ago.
Okay,
That's
good.
terrifying.
Okay, great. It's just so we're on the same page. So yeah, I was teaching him how to play Magic, and of course, anyone who has kids is going to know. As soon as the older one is getting to do something, the younger one wants to as well. So then I was teaching my 4 or 5 year old how to play Magic before he could really read. Reading's a pretty essential skill in Magic, but
So I hear.
we got there. We got there. And that evolved to us playing Commander at home. My oldest son got a couple of his friends involved who live in the neighborhood. And then I wanted to share draft with them because I got really excited about my drafting experience and how that was changing the way that I interacted with and played Magic. So I was talking to my brother, also a serious Magic player, has played for a long time as well. And I was telling him, I really do not want to buy packs for 4 children, and myself then. And like we would make up most of a pod then too. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense, so like would the drafts be okay? So anyway, he suggested, well, why don't you get a cube? And he bought me one of the starter cubes that was going around at the time. I think Card Kingdom. I don't think that's where he bought it. I think he got it somewhere else, to be honest with you, but it was similar to the Card Kingdom one. And that's how all of this started. Is I wanted to teach my kids how to draft, and I wanted to do that on a budget. I didn't want to spend $100 every time I went and drafted, and it has then evolved from there.
So then it in this case kind of talking about the Falls cube that you've curated here,
Yeah,
is that still stems from that original one that you put together?
it does.
Oh, cool.
There are probably very few cards left. I'd have to look. I keep track of all of the swaps that have been made over time. Before I was on Cube Cobra, so I have a ridiculous Word document with a bunch of the swaps.
A Word document is that may
Yeah,
alienate you more than the Mac comment. I think
it
everybody's in
could.
spreadsheets. It's like I have a notepad of all my changes.
Yeah. So I'm an English major. Not I know Magic's used to more of a math crowd, but I'm an English major, so yeah, Word document for me.
It takes all kinds, Derek.
It's true. That's true. So no, I wouldn't think that there were too many cards left from that original list, but probably a couple. I'd have to look. But yeah, that's how this started, how the Falls Cube started, and then that project has evolved considerably over time.
I love that. That's such an encouraging thing. I know for thinking about my own family as my kids are growing up and the things I hope that I get to encourage them in at different times, as they're more excited about reading and math. But yeah, that's so encouraging to hear. So thinking about kind of nowadays, how would you introduce the Falls Cube to a new group of players? Like what's your elevator pitch?
So I think about this a lot. My local group has some really consistent people, and we've worked quite a bit to cultivate those over time, but it does have new people all the time. I just drafted my cube on Sunday at my local game store, and we had one person who had never drafted before, and two others who were seasoned drafters but had never drafted my cube. So here's the pitch that I gave them. And they're not cube aficionados, so pieces of it didn't make sense to them. But I said the name regular cube was taken by the wonderful people at Lucky Paper Radio. So everyday cube, right? Like if you know how to play Magic, you're going to have fun playing this. If you're new to drafting, that's totally fine. If you're a seasoned player, that's totally fine. My goal is to make sure that everybody has a good time and has a good experience and can find interesting things both in the play patterns and in the drafting, for them to latch onto and be interested in.
I love that spirit. That's such a like an open-handed way to introduce a cube. Do you find that that helps players get a handle on it, or is it just like, hey, welcome in, we're gonna figure it out?
Yeah, part of it's just the overall vibe that I'm trying to go for is, everybody's welcome. We're gonna figure this out together. No matter what your skill level is, we're gonna have a good time and hopefully be kind humans to each other. But I do have a list of like, two color archetypes that I would have on the Cube Cobra overview. I do have a paper list of those, right? So people can glance at that, not the same document, but just like very nuts and bolts, slimmed down. So they can glance at that and get a sense of like, okay, I would like to be black and green. Let's see what black and green cards I can put together.
So it's kind of like those handouts from different limited sets historically, right? Like the little card that comes in and that says, "Hey, if you need a pointer,
Hmm.
maybe lean toward this."
Yeah, they started doing those after I did this, so I don't know, folks at Wizards, but no, it's a really good idea to just give players, especially ones new to draft, a sense of like where they could go.
Oh, I imagine your royalty checks are on the way from those, probably.
Yeah, if Gavin Verhey is listening, right? You know,
Here's hoping, maybe.
yeah,
I appreciate that you referenced in your overview on Cube Cobra that it's somewhere between the regular cube and Bun Magic. I think was the other end of it, or the Bodleian,
Bodleian,
with
yeah,
our friend Jake.
yeah.
So get kind of finding yourself in the middle of like mid to upper power, and it's a eternal cube using cards from all over the pool, but kind of in a specific power band.
It lives in a unique space, actually. And it's been interesting putting the cube into the voting for CubeCon. And I did get in this year. Thank you so much to anybody who's listening that voted for my cube. I'm so excited about it, like irrationally excited that my cube is in.
Yeah.
But
You can't see the big congratulations in the banner behind Derek right
right.
now that he may or may not have printed for himself. It's hard to know.
Yeah, my wife took out skywriting for it. No. She was excited about it too. So no, the voting's kind of an interesting piece because the lovely people that do all the work to put KubeCon together, they're awesome, just to be clear. But sometimes it's tough to put these cubes into buckets, right? And I think the people doing that work, I'm sure would agree. So I got put in last year with Jake's Bodleian cube, and they're similar cubes in a way. They have similar goals, sort of, but Jake is like completely on one side of the power band compared to what I'm trying to do. Like I'm deliberately not putting some of those cards into my cube, like on purpose, not putting those in. It's just an interesting kind of dynamic.
Because like similarly, you're not drawing out a whole lot of power either. You know, you're not going. You referenced the regular cube on the other side,
Mhm.
Anthony's regular cube, where there's a lot of kind of intentionally low powered options that can still hang. You're like above that.
Right. Yeah. So I really stand by this that the goal is to be somewhere in the middle of those two projects. And I really appreciate both of those cubes. I've played the regular cube both years that I've attended KubeCon, and I've played Bodleian both years as well. And I really appreciate those cubes. Those are the kinds of magic that I want to be playing as well. I just wanted to know, is there something in the middle or maybe just a slight touch towards the powerful side between these?
So how would, and this may be a little bit esoteric, but how do you describe that difference in play or in draft? Like how does that feel differently than one of those other environments maybe?
Yeah, I, that's a good question. It has to do with the cards that could completely take over a game all by themselves. And often they're the cards that we see banned. They're the cards that we see people getting really excited about during spoiler season. And then all of a sudden, Steel Cutter is banned in standard, right after everyone picks up 4 copies. Like I knew that card was not going to be for me. I knew that card was not going to be for my cube. Let alone the kinds of things like Oko or the Titans or Ragavan or whatever it might be. And more power to the folks that want to play those. I want to play those in Jake's cube once in a while. And I want to make sure to kind of preserve the more medium power environment for the people who are not paying as much attention, to spoiler season and, what cards got banned. So they don't know that Ragavan's busted. It just looks like a red 1-drop to them. But no, it could win the game on turn 1.
It's just like Jackal Pup. Come on.
Right, right. In my local group, we get a lot of people who come back to Magic specifically to just play Cube. So they're not paying attention in the same way that some of us, right, Cube designers who are likely listening to this, they're not paying attention to the overall state of Magic in the same way. So I want to make sure that they can come in and draft something that seems reasonable to them, and they didn't just miss something because they weren't focused on the larger picture of Magic.
Yeah, fewer traps or the I know Parker Lamascus has talked about trivia checks, like those sorts of things that you just
Right,
have to know or be aware of.
right.
I do enjoy. You said you're an English guy. So the specificity of language I appreciated in your overview. You described no egregious outliers, which I love implies not that there are no outliers, but that the ones that are there on purpose, right?
That's literally correct. Yeah, and yeah,
Yes.
no, that was absolutely the intention. Thank you for noticing that. So I might be getting this wrong, but I'll tell just a brief story. I live in Wisconsin, so I'm close to Madison. The Madison Cube Group is extensive. I know you've had Noah on, and I think you had Dan and Mike on
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty early on. So the Madison Cube Group is extensive, and a lot of them are working on KubeCon. Again, bless their hearts, bless their souls. We really appreciate you. And the thing is like, I think somebody was saying something about, did they just go through some of the cubes and put cubes into each, of the buckets for voting based on what cards were in there?
Right.
And
Right.
like Lelia is in my cube, but it is not as busted as it's going to be in a traditional vintage cube or as it is in Bodleian. Like you can only get more lower powered stuff, so it's a little more fair. Mother of Runes has to be in there, or maybe Giver. We'll see what I decide before CubeCon. But Mother of Runes or Giver of Runes has to be in there to make sure that the aggro decks can hang with some of the more powerful 4 drops that are in there. So I'm really trying to be intentional and careful about the choices that I'm making when putting this together.
Well, and it sounds like as a product of almost literally a decade of play, that a lot of those decisions are going to be pretty intentional by this point.
Yeah, we played this a lot when it was me and the 4 teenagers. It was, quite a bit of sessions just at the house, working our way through what was going on. And as that kind of evolved, I was a teacher for a long time, and I had some of my college students were into Magic. We had them out sometimes, to try to get full pods and whatnot. So I really got a good sense of how this worked, nuts and bolts, for both the people who knew it well, like my kids and their couple friends that drafted all the time, as well as people who were just completely new. I think the first drafts were like right after the lockdowns were lifted.
Most people don't have a playtest group in their house, so maybe there's an advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, it's good and bad, right? Because sometimes the kids, the young men now, they're adult men, most of them, young adult men, at this point, they would have, just wild reactions to stuff. They would be like, this card is absolutely broken. And no, it's not. You just lost to that card that day, and it's fine. It's going to be okay.
That means it's broken, Dad.
Yeah, clearly. Can we pause for a second?
Absolutely.
My kids are making ice cream. God bless them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's totally fine.
So this is what you have to look forward to, Cade.
I love it.
Kids trying to make ice cream and making a ton of noise. And so
I joked like when I posted when my third son was born, it's like just 4 more and we can draft, like that kind of joke. So then here you get to actually like do some of that where you get to like just get to bounce those ideas off, just get to share it with the people around you in an active way. It's really cool.
One of the really amazing things is that the kids are now using Magic to make their own connections with people. So my son's best friend lives literally across the street. He's been over here playing Commander for a long time. I used to build decks so he could come to F&M with us. He's in the inaugural Cube draft group. He was there for a lot of that. He's at college now playing volleyball, and he's teaching his volleyball teammates how to play Magic so that they can have different ways to spend time together. And my oldest went off to college this year. He's making friends, by playing Magic, and it warms my heart pretty significantly. And it feels weird to say, I'm a Midwest person, but it makes me really proud to see the kids take something that I taught them and like go out into the world, right? And kind of use those skills to form their own connections. Just makes me really happy.
Yeah, it always sounds cliche when we talk about like, oh, it's more than a game, right? It's more about the gathering, but so much of it is about these connections that we make along the way. And I think especially as a parent, what does that look like when your kids get to carry that out too? How awesome.
Yeah. And, I skew a little more on the older side compared to most of the Cube community. But there are some dads out there too, some Magic dads. But it's a pretty unique experience. And so I've talked to some of the, newer dads or dads that have kids kind of upcoming like yourself. There are absolutely good reasons to get your kids involved in something like this because they will take some of those lessons and put them out into the world in their own way. It's pretty great.
And there are ways to do it that don't sacrifice being a cultured human out in the world. You don't just become a denizen of the dungeon to do it. I promise.
Yeah, my kids are relatively cultured humans. We do other stuff too.
Well, I want to engage with a couple of the decisions that you made that I think are really interesting, especially for other people considering how to put things into their own environment or what they may want or not want. I really like how you talked about some of the archetypes you endeavor to include as being triangle or pivot. Can you speak to some of that sensibility?
Absolutely. I stole that language, I think, from Riptide, which is a Cube community of yore. Most of that discussion happens on Discord now, on the Cube Talk Discord and in the CubeCon Discord sometimes, and the little local ones. So I think I stole that language from them, if I'm not mistaken. But the idea there, the idea behind a pivot archetype or a triangle archetype is that there are cards seated in not just a color pair, but in three colors specifically, right? So a wedge or a shard, so that you could get some really interesting interactions in different decks depending on who's drafting, depending on, how the packs were opened and what cards came up individually. And I really thought that idea was absolutely incredible. So one of the big early overhauls that I did was change some of the two color archetypes so that they could go together a little bit more and then have a little bit more overlap between, white and black having a lot of tokens and looking to get rid of them for value versus the sacrifice deck and red and black. So then trying to make sure that there were things that would go between all of those, right? So that you could get a little bit of Mardu. Maybe it's a, red black deck that's splashing a white card or two, or a white black deck that's splashing Mayhem Devil, right? Because they want to sacrifice whatever it's going to be. And that makes the drafts a little more dynamic too, or at least that's what I've found.
Do you think that approach comes from just your personal predilections, or is that more of an effort to make the draft more accessible?
I think the reasoning for me is that I didn't want the drafts to be the same all the time. Like I said, often we were drafting with like 6 people. And with a list of 360, you're going to get the same decks happening, especially as the people got to know the environment a little bit. They had very specific things that they were trying to do. So I was trying to shake them up a little bit and get them to evaluate cards in a little bit of a different way. This is just with that teaching lens, right? Like I'm trying to get them to make progress in how they're developing as drafters. So just to use this example, if they have Mayhem Devil, but then they see Lingering Souls and they're like, ooh, maybe I want all of those flying tokens. Trying to get them to see the different ways that they could go within the draft itself.
That's cool. Well, and I think one of the ways you support archetypes that can go in different directions or cards that can go in different directions is with your mana base. I appreciated your sensibility to avoid traditional fetch lands, but to include a whole bunch of evolving wilds type or like more grounded fetch lands, if you will.
Yeah, I get a ton of grief from especially the more established drafters because they get very frustrated. And it's to the point where I make sure that it's in my opening spiel now when I'm describing the draft. I'm like, listen, you will not find fetch lands. Okay. It's important for you to understand that there are no traditional fetches. You're only going to have ones that get basics. Your mana is going to be more challenging because everybody's used to that vintage cube kind of list where there's fetches and shocks. And now the new technology for a lot of cubes is double fetches, double shocks. And, God bless the people that are doing that. They're making their own choices. I am just going to go in a different direction, right? All the love and respect to them. I want people to work harder for the mana base. So that's what's driving those decisions. And it really changes the power level pretty considerably.
Yeah, lands entering tapped, certainly a huge difference on those. Your turn sequence looks very different.
Yeah. And so the aggro decks need a little bit of help. So if discerning listeners go to my list on Cube Cobra, they'll see, some color pairs get a fast land as a treat, but but a lot of the lands, many of the lands do come in tapped or their pathways. I absolutely adore the pathways. I will stand by that no matter what. Or their pathways where you have to make a decision that then impacts the later decisions you'll make over the course of the game.
It's really interesting to hear some of those as the directions you've chosen to go, because sometimes people will eschew fetch lands because of the shuffling challenge, or they may choose to not do pathlands or the pathways because they're double faced and there's a technical aspect of that. So that's interesting to hear that you've picked a different lane for a very particular design goal, but like landed against some of these other things that people have tried to avoid.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. At the outset of the cube, I did not worry as much about cards needing to flip. I had a lot of the transforming werewolves and things like that. I have since moved away from most of those kind of cards for accessibility reasons. Just I want to make sure that whatever the card looks like to someone as they're drafting it, that's what they're going to get. But I'm going to stand firm on these pathways. I'm not going to change on those ones. And it's such a simple thing for folks to understand. I feel like it's going to be fine. I feel like it's fine.
No, absolutely, and please don't hear that as a criticism. It was
No,
more,
no, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And I think like the pathways in particular are, it's a choice you make one time, right? It's not something
right.
that you have to engage with a whole bunch. Like, what's on the backside of this? It's like, well, you choose
Doesn't
once and
matter.
it's done.
Yeah,
That's
unless you're going to bounce it, it doesn't matter.
right.
So,
How frequently do you make changes to the Falls Cube based on how often you get to play it?
I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty regular group. It's been a lot of work. I am not as fortunate as the Madison folks. Those folks are drafting once or twice a week if they would really like to. So my group gets together every other week. We're not always drafting my cube. It's evolved over time, but it started as, mine was one of 3 cubes. So we would draft my cube pretty regularly. I am making changes when sets come out, but I am keeping track of like what cards am I paying attention to, what cards are in winning lists really consistently. A lot of people have talked about this. Lucky Paper Radio is a good example, but they've talked about the small sample sizes that we have. So I don't want to make changes just based on one draft, but I will consider making changes after 4 or 5, right, with a particular card. And some cards have been in for a long time, and it's just, their time has passed. They do not spark joy anymore for me, and it's time to see you off into the sunset. So luckily, I get to draft my cube probably every other month at this point. We have a lot more designers, so a lot more people are looking to draft, but people seem to gravitate towards mine. People like to draft it, so I'm not going to complain about that. And like I say, changes. Whenever I see the need, certainly when new sets come out. I'm not super enthused about Universes Beyond, as I know a lot of cube people are not, but you'll see a Lord of the Rings card sneak in, here and there.
Out of curiosity, do you remember which one?
I do. I was just talking to my brother about this because he asked me if I was going to include any Final Fantasy cards, and I was like, probably not. I love Final Fantasy. I played the original when I was young, but the aesthetic is just maybe not a good fit for me. So there are 2 Lord of the Rings cards in Falls Cube. One is Reprieve, and my brother said that could just be in any normal set, right? That could be a card. As soon as they reprint it in a normal set, whether you have the Lord of the Rings art or not, it is what it is. The other one is Rise of the Witch King. It's a Golgari card.
That one I'm less familiar with.
Yeah, it's 2 black green. Each player sacrifices a creature. If you sacrifice a creature this way, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Sweet.
So there's a small reanimator theme in Falls Cube, so that's actually one of the pieces that will literally get you back whatever you want.
Well, you've mentioned accessibility as being something that's important. I kind of wondered with changes and trying to keep things in a familiar space, how those things connected. Like if you were trying to make changes to make things more accessible, or if that's a consideration as part of that.
So one of the things in my teaching and in my work, I work in higher education, is I've been much more sensitive to accessibility needs. Magic is a very inaccessible game for a lot of different reasons. So I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. I do have 2 textless cards, Lightning Bolt and Path to Exile. But if you have played Magic, it is likely that you probably know what those 2 do. So no textless cryptic command or anything
I
like
was
that.
going to
Yeah.
mention Cryptic Command or
No,
Urza Saga.
no. Yeah, that's outside the bounds of what I personally would consider accessible. Other people are going to make their own determinations. So that's one of the things. And I try to make sure that cards have the reminder text on them. I might have mentioned, my play group has a lot of people who are coming back to Magic and are, more in my age demographic. So they sold Magic cards and got out a long
Yeah.
time ago. And they're just looking for a way to play where they don't have to own cards, where they don't have to purchase anything. They can just come in, play some Magic, a couple times a month, and be done. They need the reminder text because they're not playing every set. They're not drafting every set 10 or 15 or 20 times. That's not what's happening. So they need the reminder text on stuff. So I do occasionally make considerations for art. The aesthetics do matter to me, but most of the time I'm trying to get cards that give you that reminder text.
I appreciate that this is probably like the truest form of reminder text for folks that haven't played in a while. Like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you do actually know how Menace works. It's just been a bit.
Yeah, and maybe not menace or vigilance, but certainly the set mechanics. That's one of the ones. I don't want somebody to look at a card and be like, "What does Boast do?"
Yeah.
I was not playing when that mechanic came out, and I don't want them to have to look it up on their phone as best I possibly can. But the other accessibility thing I wanted to mention is Cube is great for both these returning players, like I mentioned, who sold their collections off and do not want to own physical cards anymore, but they still want to play. They still want to be part of that community. And I get a lot of people who have not drafted before or draft very infrequently and are concerned about the investment of their $15 or $20. So, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have a local game store that works with us and has just let me use their space for free.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, cube drafts are free in my group, and that has made a huge difference.
There was something you said, I believe it was also in your overview there, where you said you don't want to turn anyone away. And that phrase has
Yeah.
just stuck with me. And I love that spirit of open-handedness of saying, whatever your background, whatever your interest, I'm happy to bring you in with a project like this that does have cards on all sides of the spectrum of power, but in a way that you can experience it.
Well, give those people a chance to play with something powerful or discover that something is powerful. I've had players take, Lelia, we used as an example earlier. I've had players take that just because it had haste. And then when they got in the game and they were reading the card, be like, oh my gosh, like this card's pretty good. Like, yes, sir or madam, yes, player. This card is very good. You're correct about that.
I'll go to
You know,
8. Yeah.
right, and you'll get to play this other card. Cool. So, giving them that kind of chance to learn those kinds of things for themselves. But I truly I want to bring people together and I want to make sure that we can do that. So I intentionally brought my cube up to 450 so that I can play with as few as 6 or as many as 10. Once we get to 12, then we're going to do 2 pods of 6, or hopefully we get a few more than that, but we'll see.
Well, what a great problem to have when you outgrow a cube.
Yeah, I know. And some of your listeners, I'm sure, the folks out there maybe without a local game store or are just starting to get their communities up and running, it is possible. Magic will bring people together. Magic is one of the best games that has ever existed. You can get people to play it. You might need to convince some Commander players to play Cube. But go to your pre-releases and talk to everybody. I'm constantly on the hunt for new people to come to Cube. And if they come once and it's not for them, I totally get it. I hope you had a great time. Or maybe you start coming very regularly. One of the people that I spoke to at a pre-release once did not know this person at all. Spoke to them at a pre-release and said, "Hey, do you want a cube in, a couple of weeks?" He designed his own cube and he is in the CubeCon main event this year.
How cool.
Yeah. So bringing people together, it matters to me quite a bit.
Well, and how special, Derek, to see this heritage. I mean, not just in your own family, but in the consistency of putting other people in this space where they can succeed and then letting them do that is really cool to hear.
I'm so excited for him. I have not got a chance to draft this cube yet. I've had some personal things going on in my life that have made my life complicated. Thank you, Cade, for being flexible on the date for this recording. But I think we're going to try to draft his cube on the next session that we have. So I'm excited to get into that. But he came to KubeCon last year on my recommendation, had a great time. It's just spreading this kind of community.
Derek, you've already had so many great thoughts about things that the designers can do to try to help with either their projects or their play group. But trying to kind of wrap that into a neat little package, what advice would you want to offer to other designers as they're experiencing their own steps of the journey?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Hopefully, some of that advice is helpful to people. To encapsulate it, I think the most important things for me are that Cube is about community. And if you are trying to bring people together, if you are being inclusive and trying to bring whomever is interested in playing some Cube and interested in Magic, and you're trying to respect those people, I think you're going to be successful. It's about the tone that you set. And I do think that Cube's accessibility versus like a retail draft that's going to cost somebody $15 or $20 is going to be important. And maybe my perspective on that is a little unique because of my kids and because of the way that I came to this, that I came to these Cube projects. But for me, making sure that it is accessible financially and for the people that might want to just come in and draft without owning cards, those are the two most important things from my perspective. The design stuff, the Cube design pieces, there are going to be much more seasoned, Cube designers than me who are going to have insightful things for you to listen to about that, and listen to them on Cade's podcast here. But for me, it's those two pieces: community and accessibility, making sure that you're as inclusive as you possibly can be, with people, and making sure that the drafts are accessible.
Love it. And maybe in fairness, Derek, we shouldn't say that there are folks that are necessarily more seasoned, just differently seasoned.
Sure. Sure.
Well, as we are trending toward wrapping up here, I get to ask one of my favorite questions, which is, of course, if you could have any card printed as a promo, what card would you pick and who would you have do the illustration?
For me, it came down to a decision between two cards. I absolutely love Cogwork Librarian. So we talked about Jake in the Bodleian Cube before. I was playing Cogwork Librarian before I had drafted Bodleian. I had never considered giving everyone a Cogwork Librarian, but I've done it a couple of times since. It's fun in small doses for me. I love that Jake does it with every draft. But for me, it came down to Cogwork Librarian or one of my other all-time favorite Cube cards, which is Fallen Shinobi.
Yeah.
I love ninjas. That was one of the times I had come back to Magic, was like right when Mirrodin and Ravnica and Kamigawa were happening. And so that has stuck in my mind. And ninjas are better than ever, everybody, just so you know. And it's an archetype that works in my cube. So, get out to KubeCon and draft you some ninjas.
Make sure you block in the Falls Cube. That's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
Blocking matters, unless it's a 1/1 flyer, and then you're in trouble. But so my final answer is going to be Fallen Shinobi, although I don't think anyone has mentioned Cogwork, and I couldn't believe that Jake didn't.
That is really surprising. Yeah.
In his episode, like I was like, what? How could it possibly not be Cogwork? Whatever. Anyway, Fallen Shinobi is going to be my final answer, and Magali, I'm going to butcher the last name. It starts with a V.
Villeneuve.
Yeah. She's a great artist. I love the lands that she did for Dominaria, the stained glass ones. I love her Mother of Runes. She did a bunch of Lord of the Rings art that I'm a huge fan of. I think she would knock it out of the park. I am not a huge fan of the current Fallen Shinobi art. So that's the one.
And it got a reprint in the Outlaws of Thunder Junction Commander set as well, I think. So another
sure did.
Take.
Sure did.
I wish you all could see the expression that Derek is making right now.
I don't know I love and respect artists. I cannot imagine having the skill set to do something like that. I respect them a ton. I don't know what's going on in that second Fallen Shinobi art. The character has like werewolf legs almost and like 4 arms. I don't know what's going on. That's not the one for me, Kate. I'm sorry.
We'll get Magali on the line and we'll see if we can fix that for you.
That would be great. That would be great.
This is a great choice. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Derek, this has been a delight. I'm so glad that we got the chance to sit down and unpack the project and really just talk about the journey of how it came about and what it's done for your friends, your family, and your community. It's been really great to go through this. If folks want to draft the Falls Cube, they should go to KubeCon, it sounds like. But if they want to follow up, kind of learn more about the process behind it or get in touch with you, where should we point them?
I am on a variety of Cube Discords. You can find me on the KubeCon Discord. That's often where I'd be most likely to respond to a message. I am not the kind of person who does a lot of promotion outside of that. So thank you so much for this opportunity to have the chance to talk about all of these things and kind of my experience with this. This has been great for me too. So I appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, Discord, Decarabas, or Derek, and certainly in the KubeCon Discord, you'd be able to find me. I do have a Lord of the Rings cube. I know you talked to Thomas about his Lord of the Rings cube. Mine's a little different take than his, but I really appreciate his too. So yeah, those are my two main projects right now. I am going to put something new together, but I got to get this personal stuff squared away first. So maybe next year.
Yeah, if you can figure out how to be in multiple places at once, you let me know. I'll be the first
Yeah,
to buy the book.
seriously. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Derek, thank you so much again for your time. This has been such a joy, and I'm looking forward to more opportunities to connect in the future.
Yeah, you as well. Thank you so much.